So we pick up, we're in chapter, Yoga of the Field and the Knower of the Field. Yoga of the Field and the Knower of the Field. So 13 number. I'll take a little time with Swami Venkatesananda this morning. So what was said about what is knowledge? So yesterday, Lord Krishna said, such and such is knowledge. And what is that?
To differentiate between the known and the knower.
Between the
field and...
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. That's it. You're just saying a different way. Yeah.
Yep.
Between the field and the knower of the field. To know the field as distinct from the knower. Oh. So that's knowledge. Highest knowledge. We took a little time with that yesterday. Okay, so we continue. And we had read, we'll just read these sutras. And there is a new one here. Do thou also know me as the knower of the field in all fields, O Arjuna. Knowledge of both the field and the knower of the field is considered by me to be true knowledge. So that's the translation of what we've just discussed. What the field is, and by the way, he just says it, and the depth of what he says can be lost, of course, and it is. And we'll discuss today how it is that it's lost. But who is the knower of all of the fields? What does he say?
God or Krishna.
Krishna, yeah. Not the name Krishna, the essence. Krishna, the essence that's speaking, through that form. So what the field is and of what nature, what its modifications are, and whence, so whence, Old English, when it is. So placing it in time, and the modifications of it, and the nature of it. And also who he is, and what his powers are, all hear from me in brief. Hear all from me in brief. And then he says, sages have sung in many ways, in various distinctive chants, and also in the suggestive words, indicative of the absolute, full of reasoning and decisive. So we could say the sages of all of the traditions, right? Not just, but then of course the Upanishads, and we know the Bhagavad Gita as the cream of the Upanishads. So, okay, continuing. Now he's describing, and he starts at a very high level, and he says describing the field, not the knower, the field. The great elements, egoism, intellect, and also the unmanifested universe. We discussed yesterday unmanifested, right? So the universe in primal seed form, the unmanifested universe. You can't say it doesn't exist, but you can say you couldn't sense it. You couldn't see it, you couldn't touch it, you couldn't taste it. And of course you can say it doesn't exist, but then you would be at an anomaly related to the scientific discovery that nothing is created and nothing is destroyed. So even the scientists say it had to exist, the universe, even though it couldn't be seen or tasted or touched, it had to exist. And that's what drives them nuts in staying up at night. Of course, for good reason. I mean, because since it had to exist, but it apparently didn't exist, then that mystery has to be solved. So great scientists are burning the midnight oil, working to try to solve that mystery. And we saw recently a new idea about it, which isn't a new idea; it's very much Vedic, but that since science has come to the conclusion that there are infinite parallel universes, then somehow the collapsing of one universe provides the stuff of which another universe is born. So, which is not very far away, interestingly. So, okay, we move on. So the great elements, egoism, intellect, and also the unmanifested universe, the unmanifested nature, the 10 senses and one. He says the 10 senses and one, and that's meaning the mind. Often the mind is considered and one like that because it is the big sense, which is nonsense, by the way. Which is completely nonsensical. But it's described as the big sense. So the 10 senses and the one, so Swamiji here puts in paran mind, and the 5 objects of the senses, which are described later. And then he continues describing the field. What is this field? Desire, or we could say what is in the field. Desire, hatred, pleasure, pain, and the power that holds the elements together, intelligence, fortitude. The field has thus been briefly described with its modifications. Is there something that seems odd in reading this? I mean, we're in Upanishad workshop once or twice a day, and we've been here for a while, so we're accustomed to the words. We dare say that our lived experience is not completely in accordance with the words yet. Right? It seems like we're separate, but of course the teaching is there is absolutely no separation whatsoever. So, and what is that feeling of separation? What is that called? Anyone want to take a shot? Here it's discussed as, he went through the list. Tell me when we get there. The great elements, egoism, intellect, you should have stopped me there. So egoism is the feeling of being separate and the feeling of being incomplete. And it exists only as a feeling, and we know that for sure because we all have the experience of having transcended the feeling. Whether it's meditation or doing something that we love, we've all experienced the transcending of the feeling of being separate. And so it said here it exists in the field. The feeling of being separate is a thing in the field. And then what else? We said intellect. One of the most challenging things that we deal with here is this identification with intellect. The intellect identifies with the intellect. So strongly that the soul gets caught up in it. It's an as if, but so strongly.
And it creates the ego, right? It's responsible.
Well, creation, yeah, I mean, we've had stories of creation here already, and also in Upanishads. No creation, appearance. How would we know the difference? Really, how would we know the difference? And that's why computer simulation 50-50. From the scientists as well. 50-50 odds that this is all a computer simulation. So it says, that's in Scientific America. Yeah, that's the one science magazine that's sold in the newsstands, in fact. So, we have an experience of choice. Is it so? Free will, choice. Oh. We choose this or choose that. And if you look, you see who is choosing. And sometimes, we step through Viveka Chudamani and we see it. You can see it in the chart, but you can see it in your experience. Do you have a voice that speaks to you from above? We call it your conscience. Yeah? Do you have a voice that speaks to you from below? And you call that the instinctive nature, the animalistic nature, right? And then we're constantly choosing between those two voices, right? And we easily get them mixed up in all of this because we want to have pleasure. And we want to avoid pain. And so we will lean towards that voice that offers pleasure and pain, even though pleasure and good are not the same. But again, who is leaning one way or another? Who is choosing? Is the soul choosing? Is the knower of the field choosing something? Or knowing the field, observing the field? So here, this really coming to grips with this is an essential aspect of real spiritual life, which is this intellect is a tool. Whose hand is it in? It's in the hand of the soul. Right? You're holding this intellect. It's like a knife. And so we hear in the Upanishads, for example, to sharpen the intellect in order to cut through. And sometimes we'll hear, even here, we did the idea of the world as being like the ashwata tree, right? With the roots above, and then the trunk, and then the branches and the leaves down below. Giving the visual of Brahman, the absolute, or Allah, whatever name of choice, referring to the absolute, even beyond the unmanifest. And then from that coming the unmanifest, the seed, as it were, and then the appearance of this entire universe. And then we see it in this mind, because when we engage in worldly activity, whatever it is, how long before we get overwhelmed?
Very quickly.
Because there's always more, right? This is one of our great sufferings, is that we very quickly become overwhelmed because we're identified with this ego sense. And then, having been identified with the feeling of separation, we do in order to get something, even though we don't think we do. There's such a deep connection with this whole pleasure and pain poison that we do to be happy, and we're so affiliated with pleasure, with having pleasure in the absence of pain as being happiness. We're so affiliated with it. We're so wrapped up in the notion, an idea, that we miss the moments of real happiness that we experience, which are directly correlated with all of this stuff crashing. With the little I dead and out of the room and not present. Right? That's the peak moment. But then when we ask the little I, as long as the little I is present and strong, then it will say, this person, I want to be with this person. I don't want to be with that one. I want to do this. I don't want to do that. That doesn't make anyone bad. That's just what we're all dealing with. That's all. It's just what we're dealing with. And it's in the field. It's not who we are, you see. It's in the field. And the field is made of this stuff. And then what we so strongly take ourselves to be, which is the one who's choosing this or that and making all these intelligent, educated choices, right? I considered it, I meditated upon it, I asked for guidance, and then I chose this. I chose to come to ashram, or whatever it was. Then, is that me? And here, as Lord Krishna describes, no. That's all happening within the field. Every bit of that. The intelligence, in the field. The chooser, in the field. Which leaves us in a very interesting situation. And by the way, when we actually get to where we grok your term, this, to where we get it, it feels like we live without a net. We come to a place where we're in a void somehow, because then everything I've taken to be me is out the window. I have a story, but I'm not the story. You said so beautifully the other day. You said, I can't both ride a horse and be the horse. And I told you that goes in the book, so here's the first time we use it. So that's the simple truth of it, is I can't both be soul and a person. Not, I mean, the capital P person, yeah. But the little I will have to be silent. Be still and know that I am God. The little I will have to be silent. And so it leaves us in the situation where we really, really, really take on sadhana. It's a willing to allow for our own non-existence. Our ideas and our beliefs and all of this, to allow for them being in the field and not who I am. To allow ourselves to live in a way of acceptance, not worshiping our likes and dislikes, not putting them on an altar, not making our life any longer about what we like and what we don't like. The pinnacle of spiritual path, what we call enlightenment, we talked about yesterday. The Sanskrit word for intellect, many, viveka is one of them, discrimination or discernment, but also di, and often called bodhi. Bod actually means bud actually means the light. So really, it's referring to this term Buddha is simply, it's not that the soul is any different. Your soul, my soul, no different. In fact, Krishna says they're the same soul. Right? Because I'm clearly seeing all of these thoughts and seeing these desires, and I'm seeing the intellectual process, and I'm seeing the arisings, right? And I'm seeing the hands moving around, and I'm seeing the head when it bangs itself on the door in New Prema, and I'm seeing when it adjusts, it doesn't bang anymore. So I'm clearly seeing all of this. So certainly I'm not the field. I'm the knower or the observer of the field, yeah. And I could say I know this and I know that, but whatever I know can't be me. I could say I ride this or I ride that, but whatever I ride couldn't be me. And so even this intellect, so what we face is this Sherlock Holmes moment where we let go of our own notions of right and wrong, good and bad, and allow ourselves to even go beyond those. Where the intellect comes to the settled conclusion that I'm actually not the boss here. That I'm not independently real. That I owe my existence, and this is when we become an instrument, right? Talking from the conscious mind or intellectual perspective, this is when we become an instrument. When this intellect says firmly, I am thine, all is thine. I am not wanting to be in charge, I want to be thine, right? And that's a statement from conscious mind, and we can't help the fact that we've all been identified that way. And even after awakening, when one is in the world, active, and we had the essay a week or two ago, Jivan Mukta, and Swami Shivananda talked about this some. But when one is in the world, here, they get very much wrapped up in the worldly activities. They just don't forget who they work for. So, I mean, really, at some level, you could say these hands work for me. But now the intellect sees I'm a hand and I'm working for, and so even wrapped up in the field, still an experience of doing, as it were, but also a knowing that I'm not doing. So the intellect, in real serious commitment to spiritual path, the intellect faces its demise. And this is the way this I looks at it. I am going to die. as an independent entity, as an independent being, as something deciding my own fate, as something figuring out what I like and what I don't like, and what's good for me and what isn't good for me, and what I will do and what I won't do, and where I will draw the line, and I won't allow this to happen, but I will be happy to do that. And here's the big struggle, is we constantly come to face that. You can't get away from it. You can try. You can run, you can go to a different monastery, you can do this, you can do that, you can go back in the world, but you can't actually run away from this. You have to keep facing it, right? And the world will keep acting in a way to make you face it. And so the world is nothing but God either, in this way. Because why? Because there's this persistent wisdom, persistent compassion, which will not give up. We watched the other night. We watched Saint Joseph of Cupertino. It's an old movie. The lead character, Saint Joseph, Giuseppe, grew up in a little town, Cupertino, and he couldn't fit in, and he finally gets to monastery through a series of events. His mother pulled strings and yelled at people and got in there, threatened people. Her brother was the vicar of the monastery, the local monastery. And he became a priest, but he studied and studied and studied, and he could not remember anything. He could only remember one verse of the Bible, and that verse was John 44, I believe. And it was, I could be wrong about that, I don't know, that's just what comes right now. And it was that the Lord, in order to save or find the one lost sheep, will ignore the other 99, will leave the other 99. Right? This is compassion. And this is actually a quality of the Absolute. It's a quality of Mother, we can say like that, Divine Mother, that it absolutely will not give up on us. When we're wandering in the darkness, when we're caught up in this samsara, taking this dream reality to be our real ultimate reality, wandering around screaming and yelling because of this and that, and they don't get it, and I'm incompetent, and all of this dream stuff. When we're wandering around in it, lost, taking it to be real, when we're so completely caught up in it that the soul is aligned with it, and we seem to be in prison, Divine Mother or Lord doesn't ever give up. That's the purpose of that one verse that he remembered. And by the way, he had to pass 2 tests. He had to go to pass 2 exams with above the vicar, and in order to become a priest. And the first one of the other priest candidates was teaching him. He was a scholar, and he knew the Bible backwards and forwards, and he gave lectures on it and all of this. And as the story's told, he was so upset with Giuseppe because he couldn't get it, he couldn't remember. And Giuseppe said, I read it and I'm present, but then I don't remember a thing. And then this fellow would ask Giuseppe to repeat such and such, right? Thomas 14. And he would repeat the same verse. John 44, that's all he could repeat. That's all he could remember. And so he went his first exam, and of course he met, and everybody is afraid of the examiners, and they're very gruff, and this is like 17th century stuff, so very stern, and everybody's shaking in their boots, and he goes in, and the examiner says to him, "I hope you've studied well." He can't say anything. And he says, "I'd like you to tell me about John 44.
Of course.
But this is essential. It's essential. It's essential in our learning to trust what we can't see. In our learning to start turning over the reins. Why in the world do you do this? Why do you yell at me? Why do you give me such a hard time? Why did this person die? Why did this happen? Why did this happen? All these questions. And of course, when we try to have faith in a trusting kind of way, it'll always get broken. We hear these stories all of the time. Here, we're not addressing it from a faith in terms of belief perspective. There wants to be some faith in order to test it, to try it. But here, what's being shared is that what is my motivation, the Lord speaking, for sharing this with you? It's only for you, my dear. And I will do anything for you. I will do anything for you. And so, meaning, I will never give up. I will keep banging your head until you get it. But this is it. I am not who I take myself to be. This is the essence of it that we have to grok. And it doesn't mean, okay, then what am I? Well, I'm this. No, it doesn't mean that. It means the intellect really coming to the place, conscious mind coming to the place of contemplating its own non-existence as an independent anything. And I tell you, when we come here, it's such a darn relief. It's such a great relief. I mean, it is, because we've been lost and wandering in the forest for so darn long. And imagining that I have to take care of myself. And it's true that I have to make choices. And I have to make good choices. But all I really have to learn to do is trust the light. And learn how to communicate with the light. Learn how to commune with the light, right? That's really all I have to do, is that. And then the right choice will always be made. Will it always seem like the right choice? I can testify, no. Sometimes it will be very befuddling, very confusing, which is why the mantra, Dear Lord, I have no idea why you're doing this, but I know it's you. We're dealing with that right now, one of those things related to the ashram. So, but here, all of the things that we take for granted, that we take to be real, in one shot, every single one of them, our feeling of separation, intelligence itself, the intelligence that we utilize in terms of working things out, the intellect, the mind, everything, all of the objects, all said to be of the field, not I. Not I. And so he negates them all in one shot. And then he'll continue. This is just a one-shot entry. But really this, in terms of who am I, Padre Pio, this keeps coming. Whenever the question, who am I, comes, I have this visualization of Padre Pio in this particular movie on Padre Pio. He's a great saint. And he was asked by the inquisitor who came to give him a hard time, who are you? And Padre Pio looked at him just with absolute love, and he said, I am a mystery even to myself. And so that's when we accept life within the singularity. Within that which cannot be understood, it cannot be explained, it cannot be seen, it cannot be tasted, it cannot be touched, it cannot be smelled, it cannot be heard. The senses do not go there. And yet, it is existence itself. And it is my own reality. And if I can be still inside, not out, because out action's required, but who's acting, I'm not, then freedom awaits. So this is the significance of this knowledge, right? And obviously, if that's the case, then that must be the highest knowledge, right? And when you know it, and when it's firm, then it will free you also, right? Oh, okay. Questions or comments? Really living spiritual life is not a light calling. We come to it mostly because nothing else works. We seem to want to check all of the other boxes first. Oh,
There's a sense of humor is an important part of it all.
yeah, I think that's the boss's laugh. So. Can't be me either. I heard the same laugh with Swami Pramananda. So, okay, we should close. Final prayers in Arati, page 174 in the Kirtan book. And these are prayers for peace and protection for all. And of course, we pray for all and allow ourselves to be included in the all. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyamam Mritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyamam Mritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyamam Mritata Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashanto Makashik Dukhabhat Bhave Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mritor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudashate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And then universal prayers on the next page. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. Humble Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki, and for all of the saints and sages of all the traditions.